The story begins as an ugly boy who gets abused by his own father for looking like an evil cockroach can only apologize to his drunken father for not living up to his expectations, and his mother sits nearby without caring. This is a dream from the past of our main character named Tōka Mimori, and he wakes up to find his class president getting teased. The bully is Oyamata, and he refuses to give class president Ayaka her book back. Oyamata teases her more about reading some of the romance novel to everyone, and all the other students just ignore the bullying. The class is on a field trip, and Tōka can't help but notice how all his classmates are just keeping their heads down to ignore the bullying, while the class elites laugh away. The teacher, meanwhile, doesn't really care about anything and just sleeps the entire time. Tōka thinks he might look pretty cool if he intervened, but he remembers that he's just a nobody and he wouldn't accomplish anything. Ayaka eventually gets really frustrated, so Tōka surprisingly stands up to Oyamata and tells him to give Ayaka her book back. Oyamata is impressed that Tōka finally standing up for something, but he still refuses to give the book back, and now he wants to pick on Tōka as well. Just then, one of the elites named Takuto Kirihara tells Oyamata to stop messing around because he is repulsed by all the arguing. Everyone thinks Takuto is really cool for taking command of the situation, and Oyamata apologizes to Ayaka. Oyamata is still annoyed about Tōka standing up to him, so he starts picking on the quiet kid in class. Finally, the teacher tells him to stop and explains that Oyamata can bully people when he's not the teacher. Tōka actually agrees with all Oyamata because standing up like that is unlike at all, and he assumes that he only took action because of the dream he had. Just then, all the students are shocked as they are teleported to a strange place. Some lady calls them heroes from another world and introduces herself as a goddess named Vicious. She explains that in her world, whenever the Great Demon Empire appears, they summon heroes from another world. The Demon Empire was defeated by heroes 200 years ago, but the terrifying evil has just resurfaced. These students are heroes to her, so she asked them to lend her their power. The students don't believe that they have been transported to a different world and just assume that they are dreaming. They start to think that it's just a prank, or even worse, they may have all lost their lives in a car crash. Everyone begins to panic, but the teacher tries to calm them down by pointing out that he is there. He is useless though, and just says that they should listen to the goddess. Tōka takes a look around at all the old stuff, and that coupled with the golden-eyed goddess makes him believe that there really are in some other world. Takuto wonders what will happen if they don't agree to fight the Demon Empire, so the goddess reveals that they won't be able to return to their world. The only way to do the reverse summoning ritual is by using a special element known as a Demon King's essence, and there are only two known ways to obtain it. One is by obtaining the heart of the Demon King, and the other is by collecting the Demon King's essence that is released upon the defeat of the Demon King and putting it into the crystal in a necklace. Oyamata gets annoyed about being forced to fight the Demon Empire, but the goddess begs for their help as they are the heroes of salvation. Ayaka points out that they are just normal humans and pretty far from being heroes. The goddess assures them that they have power that the others do not possess, but Tōka can't help but think that something isn't right. Oyamata's sick of the prank already, and Tōka realizes that the goddess is what is upsetting him. Just then, the students are horrified when a prisoner is brought out to be eaten by a monster. The goddess eviscerates the monster with a fire spell, but the students are still in denial and just want to believe that her attack was CGI. The goddess changes the subject and declares that it's time to reveal the hidden skills of all the students. All the students take turns touching a crystal ball, and when it lights up, it means that they have a special ability. The summoners are shocked when Oyamata's lights grows brightly, and it means that he is an incredible power. Oyamata changes his mind on the entire situation, and now things are being a hero sounds great. Takuto up next, and the sorcerers can't believe what they see when his power shatters the crystal ball. This means that he is an S rank, which is the ultimate rank. Oyamata is an A rank, so he points out how Takuto is better than everyone no matter what world they are in. Ayaka an S rank here as well, and the goddess is shocked when they find that there is a third S rank among the heroes. Normally they are lucky to just get one, so she declares that this is the best summoning ever. Tōka is next, and he doesn't know what it means when he makes the crystal glow purple. He also notices that his glow is the weakest side of everyone's. Tōka wants to know what rank he is, but the goddess just ignores him. Tōka realizes that he's a no one again, just like in his old world, and he decides that he's fine with it. Just then, the quiet kid in the class makes the crystal glow with a black color. The goddess explains that this has only happened once before when the dark hero touched the crystal, and he ended up being one of the strongest A-rank heroes of all. The quiet kid laughs like a maniac and declares that he knew his time would come soon. Afterwards, the goddess shows everyone how to check their stats. Tōka notices that his stats seem pretty low, and he has a unique skill called Abnormal States Endowment. Unique skills can only be used by the individual that has them, and the heroes can awaken more later. Oyamata gets tired of the explaining and he wants to start doing hero stuff. The teacher tells them to be more respectful to the goddess, but Oyamata tells them to quiet down because the teacher's only a D-rank hero. The goddess then declares that there's only one ritual left to do, and she shockingly calls a Tōka to step forward. Tōka has no clue why, so the goddess explains that he's the lowest rank of all the heroes that have been summoned and he is an E-rank. Past experiences taught to summoners that the weakest hero always holds back the others. Because of this, they decided to start getting rid of the weakest hero every time they did a summoning. Eventually, though, this started scaring the other heroes, so the summoners decided to do something different instead. They decided to grant even the lowest-ranked hero one chance to survive. They put them to the test by teleporting the weakest hero to some ruins. If they survive and reach the surface and they are allowed to live freely, Tōka wonders how dangerous the ruins are, but no one really knows. They have sent countless criminals and heroes to the ruins, but none have returned. These ruins are called the Ruins of Disposal. Tōka tries to get out of it by explaining that he has a unique skill, but the goddess explains that stats endowment skills like his are pretty useless. They have a low success rate, and even when they work they don't do much and their duration is too short. The goddess points out that his stats are also really low, and even if he levels up, they want to improve much. Tōka defends himself by pointing out how unfair it is to have been summoned only to be punished, but Takuto tells him to just go already. All the others tell them to hurry up as well, but Tōka feels a bit better when the kid named Yasu wonders if he is okay. Yasu is the quiet kid in class, and he was always kind to Tōka. Things have changed though, so Yasu reminds Tōka that he is the lowest rank. Yasu refuses to talk to such a low rank, and he calls Tōka Mr. Trash Hero. Tōka couldn't feel any worse, and the goddess begins the ritual. Every hero was granted a unique item when they are summoned, but Tōka is some pathetic-looking leather bag. The gem on the bag you grow when magic is poured into it, but that's all it does. Just then Ayaka surprisingly stands up for Tōka, but the goddess makes her pay by knocking her out. The goddess tells everyone to forget Tōka because he is a goner. She considers the heroes to all be winners, and she tells them to watch the tragic fate that awaits losers like Tōka. Tōka finally shows some determination as he becomes furious and uses a parallelization spell on the goddess. It doesn't work though. When she reveals that as a goddess she has a dispelled barrier active constantly, it provides total defense against status endowment spells. She bids farewell to the trash hero, but everyone is stunned when Takuto uses an attack spell. He apologizes though because he was just testing it out. The ritual continues and everyone is just glad that their time won't be wasted anymore. The goddess wonders Tōka has any last words, but he just begins to cry. Just then we see Tōka talking to his younger self. He is sobbing and his other self tells them that no matter how much he represses it and pretends to be a harmless person, he won't be able to hide his true self forever. He tells himself to show everyone his true colors and to show them the true self that he has been suppressing the entire time. Tōka's true self is finally revealed when he ditches his weak persona and he starts cursing at the goddess. Everyone is shocked and Tōka declared that if he makes a Beck alive, they all better be ready for him. Tōka's teleported to the ruins, but it's pitch black, so he pours magic into the gem and begins exploring. Just then Tōka barely manages to dodge an attack from a monster and he runs for his life. Tōka shivers as he runs because he can tell that the gap in power between him and this monster is huge. Tōka is terrified and he tries to hide the glowing gem because he thinks that's what's attracting the beast. As he runs, Tōka realizes that he isn't actually afraid. The emotion he is feeling is frustration. He has no weapons and all his stats are garbage. His skill is also useless, so Tōka determines that this is where his life ends. However, out of nowhere Tōka finds some determination. He declares that he wants power and uses a paralyze spell to stop the terrifying monster right in its tracks. The surprised Tōka runs for his life and thinks about how the goddess said that stats endowment skill rarely worked. Tōka wonders if it was a miracle, but his attention quickly turns to the new monster in front of him. Tōka can feel its hostility and it's overwhelming. Tōka wants to live though, and he surprises himself when his paralyzed skill works again. This makes him realize that using his skill the first time wasn't just a miracle, and he begins to wonder if his ability is something completely different from the magic in this world. Tōka all out of the boost the heroes were given, and he barely has any of his own magic power left. He fears that it won't be enough to use his skill, but he's surprised when he's able to cast a poison spell on the monster. His success rate seems to be really high, and it doesn't even look like the monster's rank matters. The duration seems to be pretty long as well, and Tōka tells the monster not to be upset with him because he was trying to take his life too. Tōka completely out of magic power now, so he wonders what will happen if he tries to use his stats endowment skill again. Just then the monster from before reappears and Tōka wonders if someone will show up to rescue him like in the movies. However, he thinks about how everyone treated him so poorly earlier and he remembers how he was beaten as a child. Tōka's years of frustration reach its peak and he realizes that he's just a background character, so no one is coming to rescue him. Tōka knows that he can't rely on others, so his only option is to fight to survive. Tōka's inner self wants to conquer everything, so he declares that his fight for survival starts now. Things continues, we see Tōka uses Paralyze on the beast, but it doesn't work, so his system explains that he cannot apply the same skill to a target repeatedly. He desperately searches for another ability and ends up putting the monster to sleep. Tōka can't spam the same skill on the same target, but he can stack multiple effects. So he finishes the monster off with poison. Tōka's feeling pretty fatigued, so he realizes that consuming his natural magic power must be getting him. Just then Tōka horrified as a swarm of monsters appear before him. Tōka determines that he will have to go all out and risk using all his magic power if he wants to survive, so he uses Paralyze over and over again. It works, but he's getting dangerously close to being completely out of MP. He is beginning to faint and things get worse as even more monsters arrive. Tōka realizes that he can't worry about how much magic power he has left, so he uses Paralyze several more times. Keeps working, but there are several more monsters left and Tōka at his limit. Tōka refuses to just give up and tries to squeeze out one more attack. It's not looking too good, but Tōka receives a stroke of luck as he just happens to level up. His magic power is restored, so he quickly uses Paralyze again. Just in time to save his own life, Tōka realizes that he got a huge burst of experience from that less monster just now losing its life, and he gets excited because this means he can fight again. He uses Paralyze repeatedly, and this skill eventually rises to level 2. Tōka wonders how the leveling system works, but he quickly realizes that he needs to pay attention to the battle. Just then Tōka notices that he can now target multiple opponents at once, so he paralyzes a ton of monsters. Tōka determines that the ugly Vicious might be the only thing his unique skill doesn't work on because his success rate in the Ruins of Disposal has been 100%. There are no target marks on the monsters further back, so this means that his status element skill has a limited range. Tōka then goes through when poisons the paralyzed monsters. They seem pretty harmless now and Tōka just sees them as experience points this way. Tōka checks his stats and it shows everything multiplies when he levels up. His stats MP was high already and it's increasing dramatically. Just then all the monsters begin falling victim to Tōka's poison and he levels up several times. He puts several others to sleep and his sleep skill rises to level 2. Tōka levels up even more when more monsters collapse and he becomes confident that he can eliminate any monsters that appear. Tōka prepares to continue the battle, but he is shocked when the monster simply ran away from him. Tōka then finds something to wear off a corpse and decides that he needs to find food and water. His search doesn't find anything, so he decides he will try and eat the monsters. His poison skill has worn off, so they should be safe to eat. The monster's skin turns out to be too hard to cut through, so Tōka decides to slice out its eye. It doesn't look appetizing at all, and it's even worse when he bites into it. He just ends up coughing it up, and Tōka wonders if the monster's body is just filled with poison. Things are getting pretty bad and Tōka determines that this place really is made to end the life of anyone thrown in it. Tōka is starving, but he notices that the light on his bag has changed color. It's heavier than usual and Tōka is shocked when he finds soda and some jerky inside of it. Soda has never tasted so good and Tōka digs into the food as well. He doesn't know how his bag works and he doesn't know if it will produce food again, but he's grateful that it happened. A while later we see that Tōka has just finished taking on a giant army of monsters. They are paralyzed and now he's just waiting for his poison to take effect. Tōka sits atop a giant dragon and determines that it will be any second now. Just then the army of monsters start to collapse and Tōka begins leveling up even more. He acknowledges just how gruesome the sight is and begins to tear up. Just then Tōka has a memory from his childhood where he dreamed about getting revenge. Tōka knew that he would have to eliminate his father before he eliminated him. Luckily for Tōka, his aunt and uncle eventually took him in and they gave him some normalcy with the warmth of family. They taught him kindness and empathy and Tōka thought that he had managed to become like them. However, Tōka feels nothing now and he's not even shaking in terror over taking so many lives. Tōka is starting to scare himself but decides to just accept who he is now. Tōka buries his old self and leaves it behind as he now accepts his new self. Tōka then easily wrecks an eye monster and he pours magic into a gem next to a mysterious door. The door opens and he finds that 2 people had taken their lives inside the room. Tōka is shocked when he finds all the gems they had on them, and he assumes that he might need them when he returns to the surface. Tōka apologizes to the pair for taking their gems and he goes to explore the other rooms. After checking out a couple hundred of them, Tōka finds a room that is taking a lot more of his magic power than the others. When he gets inside the room, he finds another corpse and this one left a letter. This person's name was Anglin and he was known as the Hero of Darkness. Tōka remembers that the ugly Vicious brought this guy up as the strongest of all heroes. His letter reveals that the ugly Vicious sent them there by force. He was no longer needed and they just considered him an eyesore. He suspected that he would perish soon in this prison, so he left something behind in case anyone ever found him. Tōka curses the ugly goddess because she said the demon empire was evil, but she is much worse. Tōka doesn't think he's much different though because he just wants revenge and doesn't care about saving the world. Tōka finds what the dark hero left behind and it's a book on the forbidden arts. It's filled with recipes for magical items and weapons. Tōka also finds a scroll of forbidden magic, but he can't read the writing. The famous mage went through the effort to hide it, so Tōka determines that it must be a powerful spell. If he can decipher it, then it might be an ace in the hole against the goddess. Just then Tōka is shocked as one bloody page warns about the Soul Eater. It's the being that took everyone's life in the ruins. Tōka continues exploring and finds a door that seems like it won't open without something being put inside a locking mechanism. Tōka determines that it's the exit to the surface, but this also makes them realize that the Soul Eater must be nearby. It must be pretty dangerous. As even the great hero couldn't defeat it, Tōka has raised his level as much as he could up until now and he just hopes that he can defeat it with his skill. Nearby, he finds a face and it turns that an orb on its head must be what he needs to open the final door. His face is clearly the Soul Eater, as he can't even move near it without it shooting him. The Soul Eater doesn't leave any openings, but he needs the orb out of its head to escape, so Tōka will have to risk his life to get it. Tōka has to speak a skill name to activate his inflict status ailment, and it has to be loud enough too. There is no time to think though, as the Soul Eater begins moving on its own. This monster will repel the strongest hero, and it's the reason for the 0 survival rate in the ruins. This beast definitely rules the ruins, which means that this will be Tōka's final fight for his life and the ruins of disposal. Outside, we see that someone has appeared to wait by the ruin. Inside, Tōka's surprised that the Soul Eater isn't going after him, and it starts puking something out. This substance turns into disgusting monsters, and Tōka realizes that the Soul Eater is showing him how its victims looked just before losing their lives. Their Soul Eater clearly wants to see how he reacts, and Tōka determines that this is how it entertains itself. Just then the Soul Eater reveals itself to Tōka with a loud scream, and Tōka must paralyze the goon monsters. Tōka must poison them next, but he can't get himself to do it because they remind him of the people that lost their lives. Tōka declares that he's nothing like this monster because he could never use human souls as toys. He can't use his poison on things that look like humans, and Tōka declares that he is still a human himself. The Soul Eater seems amused by how much it tortures him, so it creates more of the creature. Tōka tells them to stay back, and he can tell that the Soul Eater is really enjoying his despair. The horrified Tōka begs for the creatures to get away, and the Soul Eater just laughs like a maniac. Tōka is completely hopeless now, and he begs for someone to save him. Tōka can tell that the Soul Eater is reaching peak enjoyment, so he shockingly completely changes his composure and he paralyzes the Soul Eater. Tōka explains that he could tell that it was the best moment of the Soul Eater's life. It had found its ultimate prey that it could torture for max enjoyment. However, this meant that it let its guard down and it wasn't able to notice that Tōka never once lowered his left arm. The beast collapses from parallelization, and Tōka explains the one fatal flaw possessed by those that are arrogant in their strength. The moment they convince themselves that victory is inevitable is the same moment they give rise to their greatest foe, and that is overconfidence. Tōka's paralyzed skill rises to level 3, and he reveals that he was just acting the entire time. He then explains that after being taken in by his aunt and uncle, he tried his best to become harmless. Tōka tried to become normal, and he tried to become kind. He even managed to fool himself and ultimately forgot who he really was. However, the kind of background character that he became clearly still had a lot of hostility deep down. Tōka poisons the soul monsters and explains that he felt nothing towards them when the beast created them. He is just meeting bloodlust with bloodlust and ending their lives. Tōka had the lowest stats to ever enter the dungeon, but he's grateful for it because it means that he was underestimated, and it is what allowed him to survive. As the Soul Eater rises in pain, Tōka mocks it for losing to a weak human that was sent to the dungeon to be disposed of. The Soul Eater desperately tries to get away, but this just helps him more. He learned that his paralyzed skill causes additional damage when his victim tries to move. Tōka finally poisons the Soul Eater, and the skill rises to level 3. Tōka puts an end to the fight with his sleep spell, and the souls that the Soul Eater was using appeared to thank Tōka. They were watching him throughout his time in the ruins, and the couple hopes that he will make good use of their gems. Most importantly, they thank him for defeating the Soul Eater. The Dark Hero is there as well, and he tells Tōka to get revenge on the goddess. Tōka knows that he is obligated to, but he wants revenge against the goddess for himself. Tōka takes the hope from the Soul Eater and uses it to open the exit door, so he says goodbye to the ruins. And with that, we have come to the end of this part. Stay tuned for next part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.